Once upon a time, deep down in a murky pond, lived a little catfish named Finny. Finny wasn't like the other catfish. While they happily munched on mud and grubs, Finny dreamt of adventure. He longed to see the world beyond their slimy, stagnant home. One sunny morning, while exploring near the edge of the pond, he heard a roaring sound, a sound unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Curiosity bubbling inside him like tiny air pockets, Finny wriggled towards the noise. He found a magnificent waterfall, a rushing torrent of water cascading down mossy rocks. It was breathtaking. The other catfish would have been terrified, but Finny, with his adventurous spirit, was utterly captivated. He imagined the exciting journey that lay ahead, a thrilling ride down the watery slide. His first attempt was messy. He tried to swim straight into the waterfall, but the powerful current pushed him back, spinning him around like a tiny, bewildered top. He bumped into rocks, narrowly avoiding becoming a catfish pancake. This taught Finny a valuable lesson. A little planning goes a long way, even for a daring catfish. So, Finny took a moment to observe. He noticed a calmer section of the stream, a little less fierce than the main waterfall. He wiggled his whiskers, formulating his plan. He'd swim along the calmer stream, using the rocks as stepping stones, until he found a less turbulent spot to join the waterfall's descent. It was a slow and steady journey, filled with tiny thrills. He dodged playful tadpoles, tickled by the cool water flowing past his whiskers. He even saw a family of colorful fish darting between the rocks. Finally, he found his perfect entry point, a gentle slope leading into the main waterfall. Taking a deep breath, a deep gulp of water, Finny launched himself into the waterfall. It was exhilarating. The water rushed around him, a thrilling, bubbly ride. He tumbled and swirled, feeling like he was flying. At the bottom, he landed with a soft plop into a sparkling, clear stream, a world completely different from his murky pond. Finny spent the rest of the day exploring his new surroundings, making new friends, and marveling at the beauty of the world beyond his pond. He learned that sometimes the biggest adventures come from taking risks and facing challenges with a little bit of planning and a whole lot of courage. And although he loved his new discoveries, a part of Finny always missed his murky home and his friends. He knew he'd return with amazing stories to tell about his crazy waterfall adventure. The end. Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, lived a grumpy rhinoceros named Rhino. He was big and strong, but also very, very grumpy. He didn't like sharing, he didn't like playing, and he especially didn't like the majestic banyan tree that stood proudly in the center of the forest. This banyan tree, with its sprawling roots and thick leaves, offered shade to all the animals. But Rhino felt it took up too much space. Rhino's grumpiness stemmed from his loneliness. He tried to play with the other animals, but his grumpy nature always pushed them away. He'd stomp his feet, snort loudly, and grumble about everything. He even grumbled at the beautiful butterflies flitting around the banyan tree. One day, Feeling particularly miserable, Rhino decided to solve his problem. He would uproot the banyan tree. He thought if the tree was gone, maybe he wouldn't feel so lonely anymore. He charged at the banyan tree, pushing and shoving with all his might. He dug his horns into the earth, trying to loosen the ancient roots. But the banyan tree stood firm. Its roots, deep and strong, held it fast to the ground. Rhino pushed and pushed, but the tree didn't budge. He was exhausted and frustrated. He sat down heavily, his grumpiness replaced with a surprising feeling of sadness. He looked around at the forest. The other animals were gathered under the banyan tree, sharing stories and laughing. He saw a monkey swinging playfully from its branches, a deer resting peacefully in its shade, and even a little bird singing a cheerful song. He realized that the banyan tree wasn't just a tree, it was the heart of the forest, a place of comfort and friendship. The tree had offered shade, a place to rest, and a sense of community to everyone, including him, even if he hadn't appreciated it. Rhino felt a pang of regret. He walked towards the banyan tree and sat down under its shade. He didn't say anything, but the animals sensed his change of heart. They welcomed him quietly, and for the first time, Rhino felt a warmth spread through him, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. He learned that day that sharing and friendship are much more important than having all the space to himself. And though he was still a little grumpy sometimes, he was a much happier rhino, thanks to the wisdom of the banyan tree. The clever civet and the spiky durian. A tale of wanting what you can't reach. Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, lived a cheeky civet named Seiko. Seiko loved delicious things, especially the king of fruits, the durian. This spiky, smelly fruit hung high in the trees, just out of Seiko's reach. He tried everything, jumping, climbing, even asking the kind old monkey for help. But the durians remained tantalizingly out of reach. Chico was persistent though. He spent days studying the durian trees. He noticed the monkeys often used vines to swing from branch to branch, effortlessly reaching the most tempting durians. A brilliant idea sparked in his little head. He'd use the vines too, but instead of swinging, he'd create a clever vine ladder. Gathering long, sturdy vines, Chico patiently began his work. It wasn't easy. The vines were tough, and sometimes they slipped from his paws. He got scratched and bumped, but his desire for durian fueled his perseverance. Slowly but surely, he weaved a sturdy vine ladder, reaching all the way up to the lowest branch, laden with durians. Finally, his hard work paid off. Chico climbed his vine ladder, his heart pounding with excitement. He reached the branch, carefully selected a ripe, golden durian, and started his descent. He savored every bite of the creamy, sweet fruit, relishing the reward of his ingenuity and effort. The story of Chico teaches us a valuable lesson. Getting what we want sometimes requires hard work and clever thinking. Chico didn't give up when faced with a challenge. He used his smarts and persistence to overcome the obstacle and achieve his goal. It reminds us that even the tastiest treats require a little effort. And the sweet taste of success is even sweeter when earned through hard work. So, the next time you face a challenge, remember Chico and his delicious durian, and never give up on your dreams. Once upon a time, nestled beside a sparkling blue lake, lived a little swan named Celeste. Celeste loved her lake. It was her playground, her home, her everything. The water shimmered, reflecting the bright blue sky, and the reeds whispered secrets in the gentle breeze. But Celeste had a problem. She was lonely. All the other swans were much older and seemed too busy preening their feathers or chasing fish to play with a little swan like her. One sunny morning, Celeste decided she needed a friend. She paddled to the edge of the lake, hoping to see something new. And there, amongst the colorful wildflowers, she spotted him, a tiny, fluffy duckling named Pip. Pip was yellow and clumsy, quite unlike the elegant white swans. He was also utterly alone. Celeste, usually shy, found herself waddling towards Pip. "Hello," she squeaked. Pip looked up, surprised. He'd never seen a swan so close before. They spent the rest of the day exploring together. Pip showed Celeste the best places to find juicy worms, and Celeste showed Pip how to gracefully glide across the water. They laughed and played, their differences forgotten in their shared joy. They built a little raft out of reeds, their clumsy efforts resulting in fits of giggles. They raced each other, Pip's short legs churning furiously, while Celeste effortlessly glided past. They even shared a delicious juicy worm, a rare moment of sweet friendship. That day, Celeste learned that friendship wasn't about being the same. It was about finding someone who appreciated you for who you are. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Celeste and Pip cuddled close on their little reed raft, watching the stars twinkle above the blue lake. They were no longer lonely. Celeste had found a friend in the most unexpected place, proving that sometimes the best friendships are found when you least expect them, and that even a little swan can find happiness with a cheerful duckling by her side. From that day on, Celeste and Pip were the best of friends, their laughter echoing across the blue lake, a testament to their unlikely but perfect bond. The sun beat down on Komodo, a tiny lizard with scales the color of burnt caramel. He lived on a lonely island, so small it only had one palm tree and a single sandy beach. Komodo wasn't sad though. He was busy. His days were filled with exploring his tiny world, a world that, despite its size, felt enormous to him. This is the story of Komodo and his isolated island paradise. First, Komodo loved to chase the bright blue butterflies that fluttered around his palm tree. They were quick, their wings like tiny rainbows, and catching them was a thrilling game. He'd pounce and wiggle, but they were always just a little too fast. It taught him patience, a skill useful for many things on a lonely island. Secondly, he spent hours building sandcastles. His tiny claws, were perfect for shaping the wet sand into towering structures, complete with miniature moats and even smaller flags made from fallen palm leaves. Building these castles wasn't just fun. It helped him understand how things were made, how different shapes fitted together. Thirdly, Komodo was a fantastic climber. He loved to scurry up the palm tree, reaching for the delicious, sweet fruit that grew at the top. The climb was challenging, requiring strength and careful footwork, but the reward of a juicy fruit made it all worthwhile. This taught him about hard work and the sweetness of success. Finally, Komodo loved watching the sunset. Each evening, the sky would explode in a riot of orange, pink, and purple hues. It was a breathtaking spectacle, all the more impressive in the quiet solitude of his tiny island. These moments of quiet beauty taught him appreciation for the simple wonders of the world. Komodo, the little lizard on his lonely island, wasn't lonely at all. He had his games, his castles, his climbing, and his sunsets. His little world, though isolated, was filled with adventure and discovery. He learned important lessons about patience, creativity, hard work, and the beauty of simple things. And that, perhaps, is the most wonderful secret of all. Even the smallest, loneliest place can be filled with joy if you look closely enough. Once upon a time, in a land filled with shimmering sand and muddy puddles, lived a grumpy hippopotamus named Humphrey. Humphrey loved mud. He loved rolling in it, splashing in it, and generally making a huge mess with it. He considered it his personal spa, a delicious, gooey treat. But the other animals, they weren't so keen. They much preferred the clean, dry sand. One day, a tiny little mouse named Millie stumbled upon Humphrey's mud pit. She was searching for a lost crumb of cheese, her favorite snack. At first, Millie was terrified by the giant hippopotamus wallowing in the muck. Humphrey, usually grumpy, looked up at the tiny creature with a surprised grunt. Millie, however, was surprisingly brave. "Excuse me, Mr. Hippo," she squeaked. "Have you seen a tiny piece of cheese?" Humphrey, touched by her politeness, grumbled a no. He watched as Millie carefully tiptoed around the edge of his mud pit, searching diligently. This was unusual. Normally, everyone kept their distance from his muddy paradise. Millie's persistence impressed Humphrey. He saw how hard she was trying and, despite himself, felt a twinge of sympathy. He also noticed how carefully she stepped, avoiding the mud. This made him think. Maybe, just maybe, his mud wasn't the best thing for everyone. The next day, Humphrey decided on a change. He made a smaller, separate mud pit far away from the main pathways. He even decorated it with pretty pebbles and leaves he found. When Millie came looking for another lost crumb, she was quite clumsy. She found the new, neat mud pit and a small sign, "Millie's Mud Puddle." The other animals, seeing Humphrey's effort, were surprised. They started to understand that Humphrey wasn't just a grumpy hippo. He was capable of kindness and consideration. They even started to appreciate his mud, now that it wasn't ruining their pristine sand dunes. Humphrey, though still a bit grumpy, was much happier. He had learned that even a hippopotamus who loves mud can learn to share and be considerate. And Millie? She always had a clean, specially made mud puddle to search for cheese in, making her happy and Humphrey a little less grumpy. The land of shimmering sand and muddy puddles was, finally, a better place for everyone.